Welcome to the Company 1433 project launch. I can't tell you how excited we are to have you here, both to kick off Black History Month and to celebrate the launch of our work documenting and preserving the history of our namesake, Company 1433. My name is Jenny Berglund, the project manager for the Company 1433 project, and I'm your host today. Company 1433 was a group of young Black men who served as units in the nation's Civilian Conservation Corps. They played a pivotal role and were yet almost entirely overlooked in preserving what is today the staggeringly beautiful and critically important Okefenokee National Wildlife Refuge. So today we're going to kick off our presentation with our wonderful executive director of the Okefenokee Swamp Park, who wants to say a few words before we begin. So Kim, I'll kick it over to you.
Thank you, Jenny. I'm Kim Bednarik, executive director of the Okefenokee Swamp Park, the nonprofit partner to the Okefenokee National Wildlife Refuge, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and the state of Georgia through the Georgia Forestry Commission and the Department of Natural Resources. Our mission is to provide visitor access and interpretive education that inspires conservation advocacy for the Okefenokee Swamp. On behalf of the Okefenokee Swamp Park staff and board of trustees, as well as our federal, state, and community partners, I am sincerely humbled and grateful to welcome you to our virtual launch of the Civilian Conservation Corps 1433 project. This is an exciting day for the Okefenokee region, and we are especially thankful to U.S. Senator Reverend Raphael Warnock and his amazing staff for believing in the importance of preserving and telling this untold story.
Hello.
Thank you for being here today. Jenny?
Thank you so much, Kim, for all the wonderful work you do for us and the whole Okefenokee region. We're so grateful to have your leadership. Our next speaker could not be here with us today in person, but was kind enough to record a wonderful message. He really needs no introduction, but Senator Warnock has been a champion of this work from the very beginning, securing $500,000 for the project for its 3-year duration. Needless to say, what we're doing would not be possible without him and his dedication to the great state of Georgia. So without further ado, I bring you Georgia Senator Reverend Raphael Warnock.
Hello and happy Black History Month, everybody. Senator Reverend Raphael Warnock here. I am honored to celebrate the public launch of this historic project for the Okefenokee region. February is a month we dedicate to celebrating and highlighting Black history, which is, in the end, American history. This is a month of remembrance and reflection, and a time to pay tribute to the invaluable contributions Black people have made to our great American story. It is a time to acknowledge Black Americans' resilience and innovation. Recognize the importance of preserving and sharing the stories of these contributions that have often been overlooked. And that is why I am so proud to have secured $500,000 in federal investments for this groundbreaking project, paying homage to the legacy of Okefenokee Swamp's Civilian Conservation Corps Company 1433. Each day in the United States Senate, I am not only working to forge a better future for generations of Georgians to come, but also to uplift the contributions of those who came before us and pave the way for our communities to prosper, so we may build on their progress and keep our nation moving forward. Amidst the Great Depression, here was a group of young Black men who helped build bridges and roads, who planted trees and created new local facilities, helping pave the way for the Okefenokee region as we know it today with its vibrant wildlife, cultural significance, and natural beauty. These civil servants were the embodiment of the change we wish to see in the world. And thanks to your efforts to collect, preserve, and uplift the grand and noble story of Company 1433, you are shedding light on an overlooked chapter in our state and our nation's story. This community-driven project reflects the power of storytelling and honors the historical contributions of Black conservationists in South Georgia. And it will provide Georgians and folks around the world an educational experience that will help promote understanding and appreciation of the region's historical and cultural significance. As I think of Company 1433 and the work you are doing, I am reminded of the words of Dr. King: life's most pressing and urgent question is, what are you doing for others? Company 1433's contributions to our state so long ago have helped keep Georgia moving forward. And every future generation of Georgians is indebted to their service. Thank you again for your dedication and passion to preserving our history. And I look forward to seeing its success. Keep the faith and keep looking up.
Wow, that was incredible. Thank you, Senator Warnock, for this opportunity and for your wonderful words. I can't tell you how honored we are to carry this work forward with your support. We have one last special guest before we begin our main program. Waycross Mayor Michelangelo James is a prominent member of the Ware County community, one of 3 counties surrounding the Okefenokee Swamp. He is thus a critical part of the community we serve, without which this project could not and should not exist. We are so honored and grateful to have you here, Mayor James. Take it away.
Good morning, and thank you, Jenny, for that introduction. We're welcome to Waycross, and we're just excited about the Okefenokee Swamp Park having recently announced the $497,000 congressional directed spending request from U.S. Senator Raphael Warnock. And having heard him speak just a few moments ago really lets me understand that this is an important observation that we're doing now. This Civilian Conservation Corps Company 1433 work that is being done to preserve, to digitize the historical records and the manuscripts of the Okefenokee Swamp Civilian Conservation Corps Company. This is underrepresented group that these 200 young African-American laborers who were instrumental to the foundation and development of the Okefenokee Refuge from 1937 to 1941. This is very important that we preserve this information. So we in Waycross are really excited about what is being done, and we are looking forward to seeing the end results and the product that will come out of this work together. So again, thank you and welcome. Back to you, Jenny.
Thank you so much, Mayor James. That was wonderful. And so now we're going to move on to the main portion of our program. And it is my great honor and privilege to introduce the main portion and the heart and soul of this work. Jess Neal is our project archivist. She is a millennial creative archivist and Black memory worker based in Mobile, Alabama. Informed by the frameworks of Black studies, Black feminist theory, decolonial theory, and critical archival studies, her work seeks to investigate, interrogate, imagine, and document practices of liberation, heritage, and culture. Take it away, Jess.
All right, thank you, Jenny, for that lovely introduction. I'm just going to get my screen shared here and we'll get started. We can all see that, just a thumbs up, Jenny. All right, great. So good morning and thank you to everyone for joining us for this exciting launch of the Company 1433 project. My name is Jess Neal, and I am the project archivist. I want to start off by saying I'm really excited to be a member of this team, and I'm honored to have been invited into this work by the Okefenokee Swamp Park in collaboration with the Okefenokee National Wildlife Refuge. In many ways, this feels like a full circle moment. My first role as an archivist and records manager was working with the Department of the Interior's Fish and Wildlife Service in Hawaii, where I spent a lot of time on the James Campbell National Wildlife Refuge and the Kilauea Point National Wildlife Refuge on the islands of Oahu and Kauai, respectively. It was there I learned the importance of conservation and was fortunate to build relationships with colleagues and adjacent agencies such as the National Park Service, the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, and the Bureau of Land Management, all actors in doing the good work of stewarding our public lands and environmental protection. As a child of the Gulf Coast, one aspect of the Company 1433 project that attracted me was the opportunity to center my archival lens on the engagement of land and water by Black folk in an intentional and focused way. There is and will always be a sacredness of land, of where land meets water, and there's a balance there that is unlike any other pairing for me. On my first visit to the Okefenokee, I had the pleasure of taking a boat tour and was able to take in the beauty of the swamp. While on the boat tour, I thought about the Okefenokee and its role in providing shelter to not only its current inhabitants, but to Native Americans seeking refuge during the Seminole Wars of the 19th century, and to enslaved persons that took refuge and shelter as they attempted to escape toward freedom across centuries. What this project will continue to amplify is that Black and Brown folks have always had a connection to the land, and land is a natural endowment that can neither be bought nor sold. It is a gift to us all. And in the words of Reverend Antoine Nixon, we only get one shot at taking care of it. It's our home. There is a long history of people of color having a deep and intimate relationship with the earth as caretakers, as cultivators, as farmers, as ecologists, and conservationists. When FDR was governor of New York in 1932, he started a small program known as the Temporary Emergency Relief Administration. I'm certain he couldn't fathom that we would plant the seed for the Civilian Conservation Corps, which would lead to the eventual establishment of Georgia's Company 1433 and would bring us all here today together. But it did, and here we are. In this talk, I want to discuss a bit about the history of the CCC, Company 1433, our project objectives and current work, and next steps. And I'm sorry, I realized my camera has been off for the beginning of this. My apologies. So yeah, we want to talk about the next steps. So the Wall Street crash of 1929 catapulted the nation into what is known as the Great Depression, which marked the beginning of a decade of high unemployment, poverty, low profits, deflation, plunging incomes, and loss of opportunity for economic growth across the United States that eventually had a global effect. In 1932, after defeating President Herbert Hoover, President Franklin D. Roosevelt was elected into office. By 1933, FDR had introduced his economic recovery plan, known as the New Deal, intended to roadmap the country out of the Depression. The New Deal was a series of programs, policies, and reforms aimed to address the economic hardships and social challenges faced by the American people and focused on three main components: relief, recovery, and reform. The New Deal consisted of a series of programs, public work projects, financial reforms and regulations, and included programs and agencies such as the Notable Works Progress Administration, Farm Security Administration, National Industrial Recovery Act of 1933, the Social Security Administration, and the Emergency Conservation Work Act of 1933, which mandated that the Civilian Conservation Corps recruit unemployed young men from urban areas to perform conservation work through the nation's forests, parks, and fields. All recruitment was conducted at the state level through an agency and quota designated by the Department of Labor. Eligibility requirements carried several stipulations. Congress required citizenship, and sound physical fitness was required because of the hard physical labor done by enrollees. Men had to be unemployed, not married, and between the ages of 18 and 25. Enlistment was for 6 months, and in return, each person received food, clothing, shelter, and an allowance of $30 a month, with the expectation that an allotment of at least $25 a month would be sent home to a dependent. Though in theory, the CCC was designed to be a program for men of all ethnicities and backgrounds, as an extra layer of protection that was documented, though not equitably enforced, Oscar DePriest, a native Alabamian and Republican representing Illinois's first congressional district and the only Black representative in Congress, managed to add an amendment stipulating the program be implemented without discrimination on account of race, color, or creed. While 200,000 African Americans did enroll, their placement was often determined by prevailing race relations during an era when segregation was permissible under the separate but equal doctrine. Local politics and officials' prejudices determined whether there would be an all-Black CCC unit in some regions or integrated units in others. Nonetheless, nearly all camps were segregated, and African Americans were often discouraged and even prevented from enlisting. And Georgia was the leading perpetrator of this under Georgia Relief Administrator Herman de la Perriere. It was advocates like Will Alexander, W.H. Harris, T. Arnold Hill, and John Hope Franklin who pushed back on Perriere's discriminatory acts to not enlist eligible Black men in Georgia. Because of local attitudes towards Black enrollees, enlistment finally began to happen due to pressures by Chief of the United States Employment Service, W. Frank Persons, to enroll Blacks in Georgia or that Georgia would lose funding, we come to have companies like 1433. This project origin stems from my colleagues at the Okefenokee National Wildlife Refuge's interest in learning more about the presence of the all-Black camp located at what was known as Camp Cornelia, and how they were instrumental to the foundation and development of the Okefenokee Refuge from 1938 to 1941. Company 1433 began in Douglas, Georgia, and had moved to the Okefenokee by June of 1938 under the new designation Camp BF-1. Between 1938 and 1942, enrollees of Company 1433 constructed roads, telephone lines, marked boundaries, cleared logs from the Suwannee Canal, constructed recreation facilities and structures at Camp Cornelia, and built log cabins and a log service building to be used by refuge personnel. CC members were also known to participate in wildlife development through the construction of refuges and streams, clearing for fish propagation. They did soil erosion control, flood control, and forest research. They were also known for their work in crises, including floods, forest fires, storms, and forest disease and insect infestation. Throughout the nation, 9 Army Corps areas directed the CCC, and Georgia fell within Region 4, alongside Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, Florida, South Carolina, North Carolina, and Tennessee. One aspect of this research project, due to discriminatory practices in segregated camps, is identifying where members may have migrated to enroll in Southern state camps. Research has shown that there was a trail of Black enrollees who came from the Midwest to find work in the Southeast, specifically in Region 4, which is a great segue into the current work and project objectives underway. This project currently has 5 components: research, travel, community connection, amplifying the project, curriculum development, and the creation of a digital archive to be accessible by all so that people may research, share, and learn from the work and contribution of Company 1433. In our research, we are partnering with archival repositories, most namely the National Archives and Records Administration, the FDR Presidential Library, museums, historical societies, and college and university repositories in the Southeast and beyond. And of course, we're traveling to get to those spots. We're also partnering with our community. We can't do this work in a silo. So Clinch County, Ware County have all been partners, and also Charlton County in how we do this work. We are working with a great team to help us amplify the project. And by that team, I mean the community and people internal to the Okefenokee Swamp Park. We're also doing curriculum development. There are plans in place to develop 8th grade curriculum to be shared in the state of Georgia to educate our students on the contributions made by Company 1433. And finally, that digital archive is going to be the key component to this project, and what will influence our next steps. It is our hope that while we are focusing on 1433 now, we can expand this throughout Region 4, the Southeast, to learn more about the contributions of all Black camps. To that end, I want to thank our partners that have been instrumental in launching this project. Of course, the Okefenokee Swamp Park, the Okefenokee National Wildlife Refuge, and Senator Reverend Warnock Office for procuring those funds to begin this work. We also have had a host of other community partners who, again, we cannot do this work without. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jess. That was a really wonderful overview. And just so you all know, Jess is just the most amazing partner to work with on this project. And I can't wait for us to do more and more work in the community and just for everyone to see her in action. She's amazing. So with that, I'm going to tell you a little bit about how you can get involved in the project. Let me see if I can share my screen here. So there are lots of different ways to participate in the project. If you are a member of the local community, so mostly the communities surrounding the Okefenokee and Ware, Clinch, and Charlton County, we would love for you to participate in these events that we have coming up. They're called Community Archive Days. And we can talk about what they are a little bit later, but basically it's an opportunity for the community to come together to bring their family records, their photos, their documents, things that, ephemera, meaning, objects that are valuable to them and their families, and bring them in and work with Jess and a team of archivists to help folks digitize those items so they can preserve them for the future. We will be handing out USB drives for people to take home and save all of their material as well. This is not, this is more to get people together to, just to build community, to offer a service. In the process, we will tell people about our project, educate them about the project, see if we can recruit participants along the way. But they're really exciting, fun days. We're working with our community liaisons right now in Waycross and in Folkston. Hopefully we'll have one going in Clinch County as well, near the Homerville and Fargo area. The first one is going to be on Friday, March 29th at the Waycross City Auditorium. We're still working out times for that, and we'll, keep you posted. The next one will be on Saturday, March 30th in Folkston, Georgia, and we're working out some details on that as well. But you can stay in the know by following us on company1433.com. We'll have more information as we have it. So another thing that you can do to help us out here is you can volunteer for these events or activities. We're doing the Community Archive Days, but as we work more and more with the community, we may have more things that we plan with the community, and we'll need volunteers for those activities. So reach out about that. We're also aiming to work with students at local colleges and universities and maybe even high schools. So reach out to us about potential internships and volunteer opportunities. Those should be really exciting. Then you can advocate for us. So spread the word on social media. I'll give you our social media links in just a second. Talk to your local library about maybe they would be willing to put out some flyers for about our project. We're going to get a bunch printed. So if you want some, we have them. We can give them to you. Request flyers and talk to your local library about whether or not they would be interested in hosting an event. And actually, I think probably one of the most important things here is that we want to do is we want to encourage people to check the area around the Okefenokee Swamp out. So visit Waycross, Folkston, Fargo, Homerville, any of the communities surrounding the Okefenokee Swamp, and visit the swamp itself. If you haven't been there, it's a really phenomenal, beautiful place. And when you go, think about Company 1433 and their contributions as you follow along with our work. So here are our social media channels. So, follow us, please. Repost our stuff. Tag us. We also are excited to announce that we are going to have a newsletter that you can subscribe to. It'll come out quarterly with all the updates and about the findings that we've been making. We'll highlight some of the exciting information and regale you with stories about our expeditions into the archives and the people we meet along the way. We'll also include a list of some of the most recent books Jess has on our bookshelf. We're calling it Jess's Book Club. And we'll even have a Spotify playlist featuring music from or music relevant to Company 1433's era. Each issue of the newsletter will have a different curator curating that playlist. So that's a fun and exciting thing you can follow along with. We've had a lot of fun dreaming up what we want to do with this newsletter and really can't wait to share it with you. With that, we're going to bring back some familiar faces to answer any questions you may have. I've seen some questions coming in, and I know people are eager to ask, and we are eager to answer them. So returning to the screen here, as I said, we have some familiar faces to answer your questions. Returning, we have Archivist Jess Neal, Okefenokee Swamp Park Executive Director Kim Bednarek, Waycross Mayor Michelangelo James, and we also have a new addition, Patrick Simmons, who's the Business Integration and Information Systems Director, as well as the Tourism Director for the City of Waycross. And just have to say, Patrick's been an incredibly important advocate for this work since we first came to him with it. And we're so grateful to have him here with us today. I have a question actually for Patrick or Mayor James. Had you heard of Company 1433 prior to the beginning of this work, prior to us coming to you? Is this all new information to you?
It's all new information to me. I had not heard of that, and it's very fascinating to realize the contributions that the African Americans made in the swamp. So I'm grateful for it. It was very, very much an eye-opener for me.
And I concur with Patrick regarding that because we had not heard a thing until most recently. And then when I heard about it, later on, I was asked to come on. So I said, well, wonderful. So I get to learn some things. And I'm a history major, so that's a great thing for me to learn. Thank you for this opportunity.
That's wonderful. We have one question that's come in from our audience. Will you be accepting digital submissions for the community archives?
Yeah, I can take that question on. Absolutely. Anything that we can collect pertaining to the work done by this company and other companies that we're discovering as well across Georgia, we absolutely want to be able to include in the digital archive.
That's great. And Jess, actually, I have a question for you. Can you tell us a little bit more about the process of archival research? Like, how do you go into an archive and collect information? Why do we have to travel to different archives as opposed to just read about their content online?
That's a fantastic question. Thanks for that, Jenny. So I began archival research by using online resources. So that's the first step. I do things remotely. And the key to that is the finding aid. So most archival repositories document their collections and their holdings through a finding aid. And in typical libraries, it'll be known as a catalog. But the archival component to that is a finding aid, which lists everything or most of everything that they have in a collection. And from that initial wave of research that we've been doing since October up until about January, we were able to determine what repositories we should visit in person based on what the collections we saw that they had. So of course, NARA was one of our first stops, the National Archives and Records Administration in DC and in College Park, Maryland. They just have a wealth of information. They have a photograph collection, Record Group 35, documenting the CCC that has, over 5,000 photographs of members. And so I was very fortunate to be in DC, I think 2 weeks ago now. Unfortunate during the snowstorm, but fortunate that NARA was open one of those days, and I was really able to go in and get a lot of photos digitized for this project that are just beautiful images that we can't wait to share with the public. And some of them you saw in this presentation and you'll see in the newsletter. But from that, of course, another obvious stop is FDR's library. I'm sure there's plenty of documentation about the development of the CCC and the policies and legislation that went into that, and also some photographs. And then there was representation nationally of the CCC, right? So there are other threads to follow about how Black folk migrated to different areas to participate. And finally, in St. Louis, there is the personnel records of the CCC. So that may help connect some dots for us for the names of folks who were in Company 1433 that we're beginning to learn. So getting those names or sending those names off to St. Louis, and also working with the Charlton Historical Society, who has family records. So being able to match those up to see if any people were local to folks, and is all a part of the archival research process.
Thanks, Jess. And I just want to follow up and say that the photos are just phenomenal. I mean, it was a tough trip to DC, kind of navigating all that. But I mean, just getting in there, I mean, just found hundreds of just incredible photos. And, Jess and I have spent a lot of time just looking through them and just being amazed. And, I don't think I fully grasped, the different kinds of work that the men were doing. It's just, I think we all sort of have in our heads that it's hard labor, it's just digging holes and whatnot. But no, there were some technical skills that were being learned. They were working with machines, fine-tuning machines, working with delicate equipment. I think the photos are going to reveal a whole new, a whole new perspective on what the work was. So I just can't wait for more and more of those to come in. So I have another question coming in from the Florida Times Union, actually, and wondering if these photos, which are amazing, yes, they are in the public domain and available for us to run in the paper, or for them to run in the paper.
Once we make them available, we can definitely share them with you. Yes, they are in the public domain. You can feel free to use them in any articles that you all are doing. So yes, to answer that question. Also, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that in research we've come across the woman component to the CCC, which was the she, which was kind of stewarded and led by Eleanor Roosevelt. And that was training young women, and of course in domestic perspectives, but they were giving women work as well. So that's another really exciting thread this project will hopefully follow, especially regarding Black women as a counterpart to the CCC.
That's great. We have a question coming in from Michael Lusk, who, shout out to Michael Lusk. He's the superintendent of the Okefenokee National Wildlife Refuge. And really, he's the guy who stumbled upon the original piece of information that sort of cued this whole project. he found, you know, a little footnote talking about Company 1433. And so we're very grateful to him for sharing that. So actually, sorry, Faith, can you post that question again?
Oh,
Anyways,
I see the
so
question. I see the question. Were all
yeah.
photos
Oh, I see it now. I see.
company
Okay.
1433, or were they from other companies? So in our presentation and in the photos I collected from DC, there's a mix. So thanks to that interview from Henry Taylor, who was a part of the CCC at the Okefenokee, and that write-up that's in the archive at the refuge, we have 3 photos, and I'm going to just share my screen again, if that's okay. And I can identify which ones are specifically of Company 1433. So we have those 3 images there that are kind of grainy, but they are definitely from Company 1433. And then we have this image here, which was before they moved to the Okefenokee when they were still in Douglas, Georgia. So those are the 4 images we have for certain that are of Company 1433, which also speaks to the larger purpose of this project. There is little to no documentation of Black servants or civil servants in the CCC. So that is what we're aiming to collect by connecting with community, family members to hopefully procure these photos. But I don't know. While I was in DC, I was like, whoever was in North Carolina photographing the companies there did a fantastic job. North Carolina is heavily documented. So some of the images are from there. And then there are several photos, hundreds of photos that are unidentified that we'll be looking to include in this project as well. But for certain right now, we have those 4 photos.
That's great. Yeah, and I think as we start working with the community a little more, we've already found community members. One of our community liaisons, in fact, is a direct descendant of one of the Company 1433 members. It was her father, actually. So we're already finding people in the local community that are deeply connected to Company 1433, and expect to find more. I spoke with a gentleman, James Everett, and he's a county commissioner in Folkston, Georgia, towards the National Wildlife Refuge, the Okefenokee National Wildlife Refuge entrance. And he was talking about how his father owned a barbershop, and a lot of his clients had been in Company 1433. And so, you know, this is new information that's popping up, and you know, I think we're just going to find more and more and more of that, and hopefully be able to fill in the gaps where we're not finding records in the various archives. So I have a question in here coming from Charles McMillan, who's a dear friend. Hi, Charles. Wondering, will there be an opportunity to visit any of the facilities that the CCC built and to understand the context in person? So I think, well, Michael Lusk actually would have been a great person to answer that question here as the superintendent of the Okefenokee National Wildlife Refuge, so the Company 1433's work took place in Folkston, where the National Wildlife Refuge's entrance is over there. And so all of the remaining structures, the roads that they built, they were responsible for not building the Suwannee Canal that people use to access the deep swamp there, but clearing it out, which is very important because it wouldn't have been usable without clearing it out. And I believe that they, Jess, am I correct in saying that they built the canoe trails and okay. And so basically all of the ways in which we can access the National Wildlife Refuge at the Folkston entrance, at least, are because of Company 1433. And so the question from Charles is about accessing the structures that were built by them. I think that we have had some conversations about that. Right now, those structures are used for park purposes, but we will continue to have discussions about that. as time goes on. I don't know if there are any other comments here about that. That's
Hey,
all I
Jen-
know so far.
So Jenny,
Yeah.
can I add on to that?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so Charles, it's a great question, and Michael Lusk, as the manager of the National Wildlife Refuge, has been just so intrinsically connected to this work and the spark for a lot of what we're doing today. But there's a building on property of the National Wildlife Refuge that hopefully in the future we will be able to provide access to the public to go along with the incredible stories in the archive for Company 1433. So I do think, Jenny, in the future, there'll be an opportunity, and we'll work in partnership with the National Wildlife Refuge for that opportunity to come to fruition. And I want to give a shout out to Jess and Jenny. They're doing incredible work in our community, and this is community work, right? This is all about the citizens in our community coming together. So we need your engagement. We want your engagement. And thanks to Mayor James's leadership and Patrick's, collaboration, we think this is going to be a wonderful project for many years to come. Thank you, Jenny.
Yes, sure. This actually strikes me as an opportunity, and I'm gonna ping Patrick here to generate some tourism in the area too. So by making spaces like these available, how do you feel about doing things like putting up public markers and things like that? It's a question for you, Mayor James, as well. Do you see that as being something we could strategize around?
I definitely do. Our tourism board has already discussed, creating literature so we can let the community know which markers and monuments that we have. So there's a population out there that would definitely come and visit and explore those monuments and markers. So I'm all in for that.
And just to add a layer to that, I think this is the most phenomenal idea due to the fact that I want to get young people involved.
Right.
And I think that if we can get those young people involved, it will keep them not only in our community, but find that there is such great wealth in knowing your components here that's going to help them be cooperative in our community. I was looking at something. I asked the question, will the young people be involved? And you said absolutely. And I love the idea that we'll be able to do that, and they will be a part of gathering and researching, get to meet people like Jen and Jess, Miss Kim and Patrick, who are able to get involved in the community and give life, energy, and engagement. And I think those are the major terms that we need for this time, especially with the craziness that's going on in our world. It's good to find out some good things, some positive things. So thank you. I just appreciate this. This is wonderful.
Thank you, Mayor James. And just to add on to that, we've long known that this was going to be an important multi-generational project, whether it's from, our elder community who had direct relatives in the CCC, to younger folks who are interested in learning those research skills or learning what an archive is. And in discussions with the community, we've been learning about how people engaged again, the park, the swamp, the land, the water. So wanting to generate some of that again in the Okefenokee National Wildlife Refuge and get them on those boat tours that again for me was really transformative, and to generate visitation to the swamp park as well. So we're incredibly excited about the different generations we can weave together for this project.
I thank you for that. One of the thoughts I had while you were talking, and I think this is really exciting to me because we can bring those young people out and they can look at how habitats have been restored. They can look at how there were setups for wildfire prevention. And then the other part is, how did they maintain roads by keeping all that work? I'm sure that there's a lot more to be done, but can we be involved in that kind of thing? Can we be engaged in that? And I think that's very good for us. This is amazing. Thank you.
Thank you.
So nice to hear, Mayor James. I'm so excited to work with you on this. And I know Jess is too. So we have another question from another wonderful member of the Waycross community, Eunice Dixon. Hi, Eunice. Eunice wants to know, how do we volunteer for this project? Which I can answer part of it. Jess can probably provide a better answer. What do you think?
Go for it.
Okay. So we are still, we're in the very beginning of this project. And so we're still figuring out all the ways you can volunteer. The best way is to follow us on social media, follow along on our website, subscribe to our newsletter, because as those opportunities come up, we're going to let you know that way. But what I can tell you right now is you can volunteer for our community archive days. There are going to be plenty of things to do there. The one in Waycross, as I mentioned before, is on March 29th. It's a Friday. And we'd love to have volunteers there. You can work within the community. You can reach out to the community members for us, see if you can track down anyone connected to Company 1433. Any help you can provide as sort of a boots on the ground team member, it would be super helpful. But other things, we may have other events coming up for which we'll need, more hands on deck, and we'll keep you posted about that. And then there are some opportunities, I think I mentioned before, with internships. So students, college-age students, graduate students, folks with experience in archival work or are receiving training in archival work or library studies work. We need you. This is a big project, and Jess certainly can't do all the archival work on her own. And hey, probably wouldn't want me to do it. I'll assist as I can. But if you're receiving training in that, we need you. We definitely need you. And this is an exciting project to participate in and further your studies. So what am I missing?
No, you hit it on the money. I also, those community connections are really key and essential for us. Last time we were fortunate enough to be in the area, we attended church at Reverend Antoine Nixon's. And, so any churches you can put us in front of, any schools, any rec centers, libraries, restaurant recommendations where Black folk congregate who may be interested in this work, let us know. Because again, this work can't be done in a silo. We don't want to just stay on the refuge in the swamp park doing this work. We need to be out in the community, and you all's connections are what's going to make this work a success and possible.
I want to jump right in here since you said all those wonderful words. I have some places they can come. I'm working at a college right now, so it'd be awesome to come to the college and also look around, and a few churches I know of. And then, of course, the great thing, barbershops. If we can get them in there and have conversations, and I can guarantee you somebody knows somebody who knows somebody. And that will help us to get the people we need to get more information and add to the different layers that you're creating right now. This is amazing. I again say this, I love it. This is nice.
You're absolutely correct. As we can see, I love to keep a tight fade, so I definitely don't mind being in the barbershop. And we've been fortunate enough to be invited, and I want to shout out Dr. Sarah Fitzgerald at Valdosta State, who invited us in to speak to her class about the CCC. So again, there's no space that I think we can't go into to talk about this project, and I just look forward to those invites.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll certainly try to invite you to Coastal Pines Technical College, and you can come to my sociology course and talk to my students. So that would be very wonderful.
Happy to do it.
They're researching now, so that's good. We'll be glad to have you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely going to do that. We're getting some more questions coming in. So one question here, the people who supported the crew, cooks, educators, etc. There may be families in the area who had great grandparents who were part of the history. Absolutely. Yeah, like the gentleman James Everett that I was speaking with last night, who had the father with the barbershop, that served all the CCC members. That's a perfect example of where we need to go to, or where we need to be going to find information. So yeah, it's just, again, it's all about thinking creatively, working with the community creatively, and working together to get as much information as possible.
Yeah, and to that point, one of the resources, oral history done by, again, Henry Taylor, who was a part of the CCC and worked at the Okefenokee, that came into fruition because a young lady who was, I think, working in the office, heard mention of the CCC, or her mother's name, who had a food cart, and she was around during the camp during that time. So that's absolutely correct. These community members, they know each other. They're the threads to these stories. And again, we just can't wait to dig deeper there.
We have some more questions coming in. So, okay, let's see. Question from Facebook. Were there other CCC companies working in the Okefenokee Swamp, or is 1433 the only one? This is a very interesting question, actually. Do you want to take it, Jess?
Sure. So there were there were 3 camps total. 2 were exclusively white camps. I have the great fortune and misfortune of not knowing those camp numbers because I'm, deeply focused on Company 1433. But there were 2 other all white camps. And I'm forgetting the island, Jenny, that's in the Okefenokee that they were working on, the remote.
Floyd's.
Yes, thank you so much, Kim.
Yeah.
So they were focused there, but working specifically, and there was a camp before 1433 came from Douglas over to the Okefenokee that was responsible for digging some of the Suwannee Canal, and that work was picked up by Company 1433.
I also wanted to add to that as well. One of the reasons, early on when we went to some of the local archives and looked at some old newspaper records of the various CCC companies that were working in the area, one of the things that we noticed from the very beginning is that there's actually a lot of information out there about those all white camps. So if you look, in fact, the Charlton County Herald, if you look back, they had a whole weekly column dedicated to the white camps, and you learned the names of the individuals that were CCC members. You learned a bit about like what they were eating for dinner, who was coming home for the weekend to visit family. I mean, very, very detailed information about those camps. And yet, when you find records for Company 1433 in the newspaper, there's almost nothing. It basically just lists off, the work that had been completed. There are no names of individuals. There's no sort of intimate knowledge. So that, to me, that was a really important realization that that this work is so important because this history has been overlooked. So yes, there were multiple CCC camps in the area, but this one we need to do a little bit more legwork to understand the contributions. Yeah.
And Jess, Michael told me it was Billy's Island. Billy's Island is where the camp was.
Billy's Island. Thank you so
Yeah.
much, Michael.
Thank you, Michael.
Oh, we have some more questions in here. This is a question for Jess. Do we know how many men were in Company 1433, and nationally, how many Black men worked on CCC projects?
Sure. So there are estimated about 200 Black men who were enlisted over the period they were there at the Okefenokee, and 200,000 nationally during the duration of the program.
Another question. So has there been or will there be any write-ups in the small local newspapers informing the communities about the project to get the word out? We certainly hope so. The plan is, after this launch event, the plan is to do as much as possible to reach out to the community where they tend to get their news. So we would like to work with the local papers in getting the word out about the community archive days and any future events relevant to the project.
And just to follow up on that, there has been some coverage on the project in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, the Capitol Beat, Albany Herald, the Rome News Tribune, the Christian Index, Douglas County Sentinel, and Athens CEO. So there has been some local coverage in those publications.
And just, we will have the PSA starting next week on some of our local radio stations.
Oh, that's so exciting, Patrick. Thank you. Thank you so much. Bravo for making that happen. It's very exciting. We're just starting to get the word out there. Yeah, just can't wait. Can't wait. So I think it's about time for us to wrap up our program, sadly. But I just wanted to thank you all so much for being here today. You have been a wonderful audience. So as we close the program, we want to thank the many people who have made this work possible. Of course, Senator Reverend Raphael Warnock and his incredibly supportive staffers, Kristen Fulford and Adrian Rivers, the Okefenokee Swamp Park, and the wonderful team we work with there, Kim, Faith, Martin, Levi, and our amazing community liaisons, Reverend Antoine Nixon and Rachel Henderson, the Okefenokee National Wildlife Refuge and Superintendent Michael Lusk, the City of Waycross, Mayor James and Patrick Simmons, the County Commissioners of Folkston, all of the communities surrounding the Okefenokee Swamp in Charlton, Clinch, and Ware counties. Do yourself a favor and visit these vibrant communities and the beautiful swamp they steward. But most of all, thank you so much for joining us today. We hope you're as excited as we are about this project and are energized to embark on this journey with us. Please check out our Living website regularly to learn how you can participate. And please don't forget to follow Company 1433 on social media, subscribe to our quarterly newsletter, and reach out if you have any ideas or questions. There's an opportunity to do both by completing the survey at the end of this program. So I encourage you to complete that for us. So thank you again, and we hope you stay in touch, and we look forward to working with all of you. Thank you.